We've spoken to our next guest a couple of times on this show, and I'm always so happy to welcome her back because some of the things that she's been able to do in the space of women's sport is just incredible. And we all know, speaking of football, that Barclays, they're the biggest corporate supporter, I should say, of women's sport in the UK. And they've announced it will again sponsor The Game Changers. And it's an award-winning podcast that shares stories of extraordinary trailblazing women in sport. It's brilliant. This is the 4th series now supported by Barclays, but the guys have been around. This is the 7th series, I think. So they were doing this way before any money came in. And they've got a focus on fearless women in football. And I'm so pleased to introduce Sue Anstis, MBE, on the line with us now. Sue, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you, Jeanette. I missed you when you weren't here for 2 weeks, so lovely to have you back.
I'm so glad that you did. Thanks, Sue. It's made me feel so warm and fuzzy. But for you, Sue, this is brilliant news, isn't it? Because it just goes to show there is an absolute appetite for this. And Barclays as a sponsor coming in, again, to help you make sure you bring these stories to the fore is just great news, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed it is. And they've been a fantastic partner, as you say, across so much of sport with the FAWSL and also the work they do within schools, getting schoolgirls playing football, so across all levels. But for us, it's just brilliant because it enables us to take the stories of these incredible women out to a much bigger audience and just helps us to keep producing the content that people seem to love. So yeah, it's great to have them back on board again.
What can we expect from this 4th series with Barclays? Because you're 7 series deep now, aren't you? And
yeah.
I'm gonna come to that in a second. But for this 4th series, what can we expect?
Yeah, I like to always have a bit of a mixture of top players as well as coaches and media and influencers, and just trying to mix it up in terms of the guests that are there. So great cast. We haven't revealed. You're the first people that are hearing about who's on this
exclusive
new series. Yeah, exclusive for BBC London. So some really great guests lined up, and just digging a bit into their stories, what inspired them, and what we can learn from them really. But there's some fantastic women that we can really shine a light on it and share the stories of. So I can tell you who they are.
Please, yeah, go ahead. Shoot, I'm going to make a note of them. Who have you got?
So we kick off with a fantastic Jessica Crichton. So she's our first guest, who you all know well, sports journalist, broadcaster. We've got Dawn Scotton, who's now physical performance manager for the Lionesses, and she helped those that don't know her, but she helped the US women's team to win 2 World Cups and Olympic gold. So she's back now working with the Lionesses, and that's a fascinating, to hear about that elite women's sport at that end of the sports science side. She's actually the first sports scientist we've had on the podcast. We've got Manisha Taylor, for the first South Asian woman to coach in the professional men's game. And interesting from your comments earlier about the BBC Sport article, very much talking about that representation of how to get more women and girls from all backgrounds into the teams and sports and pathway really. So she talks about that on the podcast too. Julie Welch, very entertaining, the first female football writer on Fleet Street. Great to hear her stories about being the first girl in the press box, as it were.
Wow.
Jess Fishlock, who's heading back to OL Ray now, who's been at Reading, so amazing, and does a huge amount of work for the LGBTQ community too. Maria Bobbin-Reith, who's the CEO at Women Win. She was formerly Global Director of Community Investments at Nike, so she talked a lot about the power of sport to change lives, really. I've got 2 to go. Amanda van der Voort, who's the Chief Women's Officer at FIFPro, that's the Global Players Union. So she's fantastic. She was at Major League Soccer before. And then we finish with Lucy Bronze. So doesn't need much introduction, really, does she? But fantastic to talk to her at the end. So really, really excited about the kind of range that we've got on this series.
And this is fantastic because, like you say, when you speak about the range, you're dealing with people that are on the pitch, that are behind the microphone, people that are dealing with physical performance. And Dawn Scott coming on is massive because these are stories and access to stories that you would never really delve into. And how proud of you to be able to kind of bring all those women together to get a real 360 picture of, what the game's like at the moment.
Yeah, it is fantastic. And I learn so much in talking to them. And often there are names that are recommended to me and I can go and investigate them. I don't know them all before they come onto the podcast. So I kind of learn so much as I talk. But you're absolutely right. And I think it was a bit of an awakening almost. Actually, was the first sports scientist we've had. In previous episodes, we spoke to Sean Massey-Ellis in terms of officials. That's such you're talking about that later on today. It's such an important area too. So it's great that we can shine a light on their stories and their career paths, but also hopefully to inspire other women and girls to know that they can follow in that pathway too. I get lots of feedback to say it is doing just that, so that's really good news.
And can I just say, the stat that I've got here, downloads, it puts you top 50 podcasts in the world. Now,
I know.
That for me is remarkable, because doesn't it frustrate you, Sue, when even now people are like, oh, but women's sport, nobody's interested in it. I'm like, are you actually joking? Like, there is, the numbers are here for everyone to see. So that is sensational, isn't it? You know, did you ever expect that, you know, seven seasons ago, that this is kind of where you'd be sat at right now?
Yeah, not at all. It's very much, I think, and I spoke to you about a year ago about it being a bit of a passion project when Barclays first came on board. So it was really just us wanting to shine a light on these stories, and it has just taken off. I think because we've got this sort of back catalogue you mentioned. There's 50 guests now. There'll be 58 at the end of this series. So people come and find one person they want to listen to, and then they look back and just see these amazing guests that have been on for the last 2 or 3 years. And we try to keep the content as evergreen as possible, so we don't really discuss too much about what's in the news. It's more about their stories. So you can go back and listen to Kate Richard-LaMarche or Tally Gray-Thompson or whoever right from the first series, and they're still fantastic stories. And I think that's what helps our numbers, if I'm honest, is people come and then they go back and listen to 20 more because they are want to hear other people's stories.
And that's the beauty of the podcast, isn't it? That you can actually go back. There is a back catalogue. You can say, oh, I quite enjoyed that. Is there any more? And lo and behold, every episode is there. And you mentioned 50 episodes. For your 50th episode, you had a really special guest, didn't you? Just tell us about who that was.
We did indeed, yeah. So Ian Wright came on as a massive male ally for the women's game, and that was fantastic for us. So we didn't really talk too much about his history and his playing history. It was much more about his thoughts on the women's game, on sponsorship, on broadcasting, on the vitriol really faced by female broadcasters. He was very honest and very open, and it's had record, absolute, as we kind of anticipated, but it had record downloads. But it's taken us to a whole new audience really, because the people that follow and engage with him, but the people that came, about 50% on that day, then did go back and listen to other episodes too. So it's kind of half and half. So
nice.
He's a fantastic guest, but he's, even in being a guest on the podcast, he's helped shine a light, I say, on all those other amazing women that perhaps wouldn't have had that profile. He's brought that to them too, so that's fantastic news.
Do you know, the thing about Ian Wright, I guess, is that he's obviously his support of the women's game is organic. You can see it's authentic.
Yeah,
he doesn't put it on, like, he absolutely loves it. And what's really interesting about him is that he's really unashamed with when he's talking about the abuse and some of the things that women have to go through. He says it with his chest, with his heart.
Yeah.
And how important is that's a really unfiltered perspective from someone like him when talking about that?
Yeah, so powerful. And I think I did ask him on the podcast whether he feels he'd like to see more male players and male athletes just doing the same and calling out the negativity that we see on social media, because it can be so terrible, and you don't want to put off female broadcasters and pundits from doing the job they do. So yeah, it's really refreshing to, as you say, he's so authentic and so genuine. That it's just great sport. It's great football. It's great sport. He was out at the World Cup last year. But it does make a difference to have that support.
And for you, I guess, I'm not sure if you've ever had, abuse kind of flung your way, because I suppose with podcasts, you have to go and look for a podcast to want to sit down and listen to it, as opposed to coming across a woman on live sport. But Sue, have you ever experienced that? Is that something that's ever come your way?
I'm getting more of it.
Oh, are you? Oh no, I'm sorry.
No, not hugely so. And actually, it's interesting. It's almost with Ian's. I guess with the profile of Ian Wright in the podcast, there was one, maybe it's not for me, it's more for the subject and what I'm, I just tend to block and delete. It's a process, that's the advice I would give. So I'm not sure whether that will get worse as I put my head further above the parapet to make noise about how fantastic women's sport is. But yeah, I try to ignore and move on really. I think there's the best route.
Yeah, fantastic, because I think everyone's got a coping mechanism for certain things. And the more women that come out and say, actually, you know what, it's a block and delete, or whatever they do, I think that's quite a helpful thing, because not everybody knows how to manage that. Yeah. Also, can you just tell us when this is out, please? I think it's very soon, just so we know.
So the trailer launches, so people should first hear about it. The trailer launches next Tuesday, which is the 23rd. And then the first of the series is March the 2nd. So kind of a international Women's Day we were aiming for, but it's a little bit before that. So March the 2nd, and it's Jess Crichton kicks us off on that date too.
I'll be looking forward to hearing what Jess says, because obviously, like I said, I know Jess really well, and the space that she's operating in and what she's been able to do has just been phenomenal. So I'm really keen to listen to that. But just before I let you go, I do want to give a quick mention to something you got coming out later this year, a book. Sue, how busy are you? Like, I honestly, I just... How are you finding the time?
That's all my focus.
Wow.
Now. Yeah, thank you. So launches on September the 2nd. So hopefully it's Game On. It's called Game On, The Unstoppable Rise of Women's Sport.
Yeah.
And yes, I've really, really enjoyed the process. So writing it during lockdown. So it'll be published on September the 2nd. So it'd be fantastic if I could get a chance to come back and talk to you about it.
You know what, Sue? And I'm hoping by then you're allowed in my studio, because
we're just exciting.
I haven't had guests in studio for like a year. Everyone's been really virtual. It's just been absolutely mad. And just actually, this is my final question before I let you go. Typical journalist. Your background is actually PR, isn't it? And so when people are like, now you're doing this and you're essentially a presenter, a journalist, and an author, like, was this a passion of yours before you did what you did in PR world?
Well, no, it's interesting, isn't it? I as a young person, but I wanted to do your job, Jeanette. I always wanted to be a
you're doing it.
Presenter. It would have been my job. Yeah. I just came to it at 55. I came to it a bit later in life, really, at 54. So so it's something I love, and writing too. I think it's, I'm sure, like many of us during the pandemic, we've had a bit of a shift in our thoughts of what we want and what we love, and just follow your dreams, really.
Definitely.
Albeit a bit later in life. Yeah.
That voice is very inspiring, and you're doing so well with it, and it's brilliant that it's got another season, and shout out to Barclays for really supporting that. So thanks so much, Sue, for coming on as always.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. Great show.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Take care.
Bye.
Right, Sue Anstice there. The Game Changers. The trailer's out on Tuesday. Your regular podcast platform. Go and find it. Have a listen. Jess Crichton kicks it off, and you heard there all the amazing guests that Sue has managed to get on. I should have actually asked her for some tips. How do you get all of these people to agree? Lauren, that's what we could have done with producer Lauren, right? Right, how are you getting on? How do you get people on your show? But